Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Reese. Thank you for stopping by today. Now, if you know who I am, you almost definitely know who Graham Stephan is. He's probably my favorite financial YouTuber, and he's the one, along with Meet Kevin, who inspired me to start my own financial YouTube channel, following my journey to $1 million net worth, as well as my journey to financial freedom. And I recently watched a video from Graham Stephan from, I believe, a couple years ago now, that was the 5 worst financial mistakes many people in their 20s make. I'm 26 now, and I'd love to say that I've never made any financial mistakes. However, unfortunately, just like anybody who's trying to achieve financial freedom and build wealth, I've made my fair share of financial mistakes. And today, I want to share with you the top 5 financial mistakes that I have personally made in my early 20s. And hopefully, I can catch some of you early on that might be making these same mistakes, so you can cut out those issues now and save yourself some money. So guys, please help me feel a little bit better today and go ahead and give this video some extra likes. And if you're new to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as I bring financial and real estate related content to this channel twice a week. Okay, so before I really dive into my 5 top money mistakes, let me give you a little background on myself. I, like many people, left high school not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be wealthy, but I wasn't sure how I was going to make that money. And unfortunately, because my father is a computer engineer and my family growing up was middle class, I kind of thought computer engineering might be the right path for me because it's a decent earning job straight out of college. I wasn't really surrounded by wealthy people coming out of high school, and so I didn't really know there were any other options besides going to college and getting a degree and getting a job afterwards. And I'm definitely not going to say going to college was one of my mistakes. However, I do kind of wish in my situation I didn't go to college and I didn't waste that time and money. However, college is great for many people. And becoming a computer engineer definitely helped me save up the money and get into my first rental property. However, I did make some unfortunate missteps with my finances right after college that probably set me back 1 to 2 years on my path to wealth and financial freedom. And I feel like there might be some other new graduates, especially this time of year, that could benefit from a video like this, letting you know the mistakes I made so you can catch yourselves before you make the same. So without further delay, the first big financial mistake I made straight out of college, and a mistake that many people fresh out of college make when they get that first high-paying job, is I rented not a luxury apartment, but a downtown higher-end apartment in Cleveland, Ohio. When I graduated college, I got a full-time position with the same company I interned with 3 years during college, and the starting salary for that position was $72,000 a year. And for any new grad that hasn't previously made more than $15 an hour, 72 grand a year felt like a fortune to me at the time. However, that $6,000 a month after taxes quickly turns into only $4,200 a month. And the big financial mistake that I made was deciding to rent a $1,000 per month apartment in downtown Cleveland that was also 45 minutes away from my job, just because I wanted to live in the city. When in this case, my parents actually lived 10 minutes away from my job, and I could have lived with them for another year and saved that $1,000 a month. So not only was I wasting that $1,000 a month in rent, I was also driving over an hour and a half round trip for my job, wasting time and spending extra money on gas that I could have saved by only driving 20 minutes round trip from my parents' house. And while I still could save about $2,000 a month because my income was so high straight out of college, I could have saved $3,000 or even more if I would have decided to either live with a roommate or perhaps live with my parents for a year and save that extra cash. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved living in downtown Cleveland, and I made some great experiences the year that I did live downtown. However, for any new grad that is focused on achieving financial freedom and maybe building some wealth early on in their career, now's the time to focus on cost cutting when it comes to your housing. In your young 20s, it's socially acceptable to still be living with roommates, maybe living with your family for a little bit of time, or just in general living in a lower end apartment. And all this money you save and invest in your early 20s is much more valuable than investing in your 30s due to compound interest. However, once you start to get towards your 30s, it starts to not quite be socially acceptable anymore to still be living with roommates or to be living in a dumpy apartment, and the peer pressure of upgrading your lifestyle will become stronger over time. Now, my second financial mistake that some of you out there might not actually think is a mistake is that I paid off my student loans very, very quickly. If you decide that college is the right path for you and it's going to help you succeed on the career path you choose, then most of us are going to leave college with some amount of student debt. Now, I was definitely very fortunate that my father paid for about 75% of my tuition and left me only about $15,000 out of college to pay for. Now, at that time, I decided it was a great financial decision to take the entirety of my check after expenses and take that money and pay down that student loan as fast as possible. And in turn, I paid off my student loans in about 6 months. However, these student loans at the time had an average rate of only 4%, which is actually lower than most of my rental property mortgages right now. The reason why I consider this such a big financial mistake in my early 20s is because I could have taken that $15,000 that I paid off the loans with and instead invested that into maybe my first rental property and made substantially greater returns than the interest on that money was costing me, which at the time was only 4%. Or better yet, I could have cut out my rent that I was paying each month and instead house hacked. In Cleveland, Ohio, $15,000 would have been plenty to put 5% down on a 4-unit property and still keep a little reserves in the bank. And therefore, I could have lived in 1 unit and most likely still cash flowed a little bit from the other 3 because Cleveland is a lower priced market with higher rents. Instead, I waited another full year paying that $1,000 a month in rent before buying my first duplex in Columbus, Ohio. I encourage anyone who's considering paying off debt fast to look at the amount of money that debt is actually costing you. For me, if debt is costing me less than 5%, I usually don't worry about paying that debt off. Instead, I'll take that money that I save by only making the minimum payments on this debt, and I'll invest that money into another rental property, which I know in my market can generate me 15% cash on cash. And that return justifies paying the 5% interest on my other loans and profiting the difference, that 10%. And this isn't even including the appreciation potential on a property, as well as the tax benefits and the principal paydown that the tenants are paying for you. Now, the third financial mistake I made was not tracking my budget. Now, one of the 5 financial mistakes that Graham touched on in his video was that people in their early 20s usually just don't create a budget at all. However, I had a slightly different problem. I've had a budget for as long as I can remember. My issue was not tracking it consistently. Back in the day, I would write down my budget with pen and paper in my journal, but then my issue was not compiling my credit card statements at the end of the month and actually looking at what I spent and matching it up with my budget. Nowadays, I use mint.com to create my budget and track my budget, and it is pretty much on autopilot at this point. However, even when using mint.com, it won't help you if you're not actually looking at what you're spending on a weekly basis and readjusting your spending as you go over or under in certain categories. I've started logging into Mint on a weekly basis on Sundays usually and seeing how I did the week prior. I think this is super important to do on a weekly basis because every month is different. If you only check at the end of each month, you can't solve any overspending that happens throughout the month, and you need to wait until the next month to correct the situation. If I'm tracking weekly and I see that I've already overspent in my bars category, for example, well, I know I either need to stop going to the bars for the rest of the month, or I need to pull money out of one of my other categories. By not strictly tracking the budget that I set for myself in my early 20s, I found myself consistently overspending on a monthly basis. Now, as I was working my 9-to-5 job and I started to realize that this wasn't going to get me to financial freedom or the level of wealth I desired, I started to look into other options to generate income. And this is where my 4th mistake comes in. My 4th mistake was when starting a business, I never fully committed. Like I said, when I graduated college and I started working as a computer engineer, I quickly realized this wasn't going to get me to the level of wealth I desired. And at this point in time, I hadn't yet settled on real estate as that vehicle to generate wealth. And therefore, I fell into the trap that I think every young entrepreneur falls for, and that is trying pretty much every business model that promised quick and easy wealth. And then when inevitably I hit a snag in the business, or it wasn't as easy or quick as I thought, I would then pretty much give up and move on to the next model because that one doesn't work. And the honest truth is that almost every business model that has been tested over time can generate a profit if you put in enough energy and focus to become a professional in that industry. And likewise, almost every business model will lose money if you don't put in the time and effort required to become a professional in that industry and make the business work. And unfortunately, this is something I had to learn the hard way. Amazon FBA was a very popular business model when I graduated college in 2016. And therefore, after watching a few YouTubers discuss how to make money using FBA, I decided that was going to be the method I used to generate my millions of dollars. And the model works very well for quite a few people. And so I put in the effort, I private labeled a product, and I launched that product on Amazon. However, unfortunately, I quickly realized that because it was a paint product, it was considered a hazardous product, and shipping was much more expensive than I had calculated, as well as advertising on Amazon became a lot more expensive than I thought, because competition for that product picked up. And unfortunately, a few weeks into selling that product, I realized that every product I sold was actually costing me $4, and I had 1,000 units of inventory. And so by the time I sold out of this product, I had lost about $4,500 on this one product. And now I don't consider losing that money the big financial mistake, as failing and learning from those failures is just a natural process when it comes to being an entrepreneur and starting a successful business. My issue is that I learned from the failure, but then I promptly gave up afterwards because I didn't want to risk any more money on another product. However, if I would have launched a second product, I now knew don't sell a hazardous product, or at least make sure that the numbers make sense with the higher shipping amount, and factor in the higher cost of advertising. If I would have found a product with a higher profit margin, I would have been generating income on the second product. Instead, I took that loss, I was upset about it, and I didn't start another business for a full year, and that next business was my first rental property. And unfortunately, this was about 2 years down the drain that led to nothing. If you decide starting a business is right for you, which it definitely is not for everybody, please realize it won't be easy up front. If you set the expectation that you will probably lose some money short term, it will be frustrating, it'll be difficult, I think you set yourself up for success by understanding this from the get-go. Also, try to pursue something that you at least have some enjoyment doing. Real estate for me has been relatively difficult. It's been much slower than I had hoped, and yet I'm achieving success financially because I do enjoy investing in real estate and I love the process. If I didn't, I probably would have given up on real estate a couple years ago now. Okay, and now my final mistake that I'm going to cover in this video, but by far not the last mistake I've made in my early 20s, is not delegating tasks. This is a mistake that I've made over and over again, and something that has been very difficult for me to overcome, and something I still haven't quite overcome, but I'm working on. I really like to do everything myself. However, I know I don't want to be a small business owner or a one-man shop doing everything himself. I want to grow my business into a large-scale business, and therefore I need to learn how to delegate tasks and assign responsibility. Now, the most recent example of this is a renovation at one of my properties. I determined that if I did all the work myself, it would cost me about $40,000. However, if I GC'd the project and subcontracted out the work, it would cost me about $80,000 to $100,000. And so I decided to do about 80% of the work on the project to save money. However, this took me 6 months to do. And while I saved about $40,000 to $60,000 on the front end, I lost many opportunities to invest, as well as any income I would have made by representing clients on purchases and sales of property as a real estate agent. Any half-competent contractor could have gotten the job done in probably 3 months. Therefore, I right off the bat lost about 3 months of rental income from that one unit, which added up to $9,000. In addition, I didn't do any real estate agent work for about 6 months, and lost any income I could have generated through that. And I bought no additional rental properties. Now, I don't do much real estate agent work to begin with, so that wasn't like a big loss for me. I usually just represent myself on my own purchases. However, I should have been able to buy about 2 more deals during that 6-month renovation, and a $50,000 profit on each property, which I aim to hit, means I lost out on about $100,000 worth of opportunity in that time frame. All because I couldn't delegate tasks to people that would probably do the job better than me to begin with. What I probably should have done was assess my goals and realize that my main goal right now is to grow my business, not be a small one-man shop. I highly recommend, if you are the same way, then practice delegating small tasks first. I've just recently started hiring out work that takes me really too much time for the amount of money it makes me. And while I expect my expenses to rise because of this, I hope that the extra free time allows me to generate much more income than I'm spending on these new employees, and therefore allow me to grow my business much quicker. So guys, those are my top 5 financial mistakes I've personally made in my 20s. I hope that instead of making these same mistakes yourself, you can go ahead and learn from mine and skip over these ones. The more you learn from other people's mistakes, the quicker you can progress on your career and avoid certain pitfalls. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I really appreciate it. If you would, please go ahead and like this video if you haven't already. And if you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you'd subscribe. I put out content twice a week related to real estate and personal finance, and I'd love to have you tag along with my journey to financial success. So thanks again, guys, and have a great day.